Welcome into this live edition here on the Built-in Buffalo Network. This is Kevin Syracuse alongside Pat Bruknis as we had some relatively big news today as the Bills finally got into the action of free agency, as we all know it is tampering period day, and they signed wide receiver Josh Palmer to a 3-year, $36 million contract extension. It won't become official until Wednesday at 4 o'clock. But Pat, what are your initial thoughts here as Brandon Beane makes his first move shortly after 3 o'clock?
Me personally, I love the signing of Josh Palmer. I love what he brings to the, on the boundary. I love what he can do, and he's very good at getting separation, and especially over the intermediate part of the field.
Yeah, I'm not going to take full credit for this because I tweeted out a list of targets. Maybe if you want to pull those up, Pat, if you can find them on my Twitter, because that'll probably be our starting point here in terms of what happened today so far and where the Bills can go, because a lot of moves have been made. And a lot of those players that we targeted, whether it was with this tweet here that I'm referencing or on our shows the last couple of weeks, I know we just played that intro. We said every Wednesday night. And if you guys have been following along, we've kind of changed it due to our work schedules here. So we've been having these pre-recorded segments. So the last 3 weeks, we had about 25, 30, 35-minute clips where we would, record our opinions on the top 5 free agents that the Bills should go after, or top 5 moves. And then we talked about all the cap ramifications and how they can do it. And we just put it all together. So we've been changing our format a little bit, but all that to say, some of the guys that we've been talking about, a lot of them have been getting scooped up rather quickly. And I think that there were a lot of overpays, especially in the early goings. Like Milton Williams got 4 years, $104 million or something crazy like that, $26 million per year. And yeah, he played great down the stretch this year. But did I see that stat today that he's never played over 48% of the snaps?
I believe that's what it said. I don't think I saw that one, but I believe I have heard that.
Yeah, so Pat, if you go to the tweet, I tweeted it right at midnight last night. Okay. If you want to find that, I'll just talk about Josh Palmer in the meantime. And while we do that, just want to welcome everyone aboard here because this is our first time going live in quite some time. Got to refresh myself here. Got to go through the comments here. So maybe before we do that, before we talk about these targets here, we got to say hello to all these people in here. Spin, good to see you once again. And he's saying we should have gotten Josh Sweat. So he went back and reunited with Jonathan Gannon out in Arizona, 4 years, $76 million. So that was actually cheaper than Greg Rousseau when you think about it. So I'm very, very curious to see what Brandon Beane's plans are for the defensive line and for the corners, because that market is starting to dry up in terms of some of those top tier players. We already saw how Myles Garrett and Max Crosby got those huge extensions. They said that they wanted to win, and then they signed these huge lucrative deals, showing how money talks once again. DK Metcalf, a lot of people were talking about him. He got traded to Pittsburgh, signed a massive deal, 5 years, $150 million. Then we're going to get into this too. Justin Fields leaves Pittsburgh, signs with the Jets. Now they're saying Aaron Rodgers could be the quarterback for DK Metcalf. So much to talk about here, Pat.
Yes, there's a lot to talk about. And I know I see a comment right here from Ryan. What do you think it would take for Trey Hendrickson?
That's a good question. So I saw that there were reports that it would be a day 2 pick. I don't know if that's credible or not, because I feel like the Bengals would want more. Now, I think that they'd be happy to not have to pay that. And DK Metcalf went for a 2nd round pick. So maybe you could get by, but I think you at least got to throw in a first, right? Because Trey Hendrickson is right in that tier of Max Crosby and Myles Garrett. So I don't know exactly what a trade would look like. We could pull it up on Over the Cap after, because I do want to talk about Josh Palmer. That was the original point of this whole live series anyways. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but I think that the Bengals are going to want to get their worth for that. So, okay. As we pull this up here, this is where I started a few minutes ago anyways, because Josh Palmer was on my list. So he was the last player listed here. And I tweeted right after midnight, 10 players who I think are realistic targets for the Bills. Trey Hendrickson, obviously a trade candidate. Khalil Mack, he was re-signed by the Chargers, 1 year, $18 million.
He got paid.
Ashton Joseph Day, he re-signed with Tennessee. I didn't put Adam Butler on there because he re-signed last night with the Raiders. I can't remember the exact terms, but those were 2 defensive tackles, lower cost defensive tackles, who I thought were pretty intriguing pieces, considering that the Bills are probably going to want to draft one, if not two. And then I thought maybe Javon Kinlaw, but he got a lucrative deal, 3 years, $45 million with Washington. Paulson Adebo, he signed for, at first, what were the terms of that? Because I thought it was pretty like 3 years, $30 million, but then I saw another one that said it's actually pushing 50.
Let me see if I can find that. That's actually a good point because I thought it was the first one you said.
Yeah, I think it ended up being more expensive than we first thought. Xavier Woods, to my knowledge, is still out there, as is Marcus Epps and Tyler Lockett and Asante Samuel Jr. So I guess after we get done talking about Josh Palmer, those are some of the players that we can talk about. But as you can see, a lot of these players have been getting signed. A lot of transactions were made. And of all days, Twitter was down. Like, come on. It was down 3 or 4 times today.
Yeah.
We were going nuts. But luckily, Brandon Beane didn't make a move until after it was back.
He waited for Bills Mafia to be able to see it, which was nice.
Yes.
And yeah, I'm saying right here, Paulson Adebo was a $30 million deal.
Okay, because I thought it was more. Who reported that?
Let me see if I can find it again.
And I know that there was a lot of guaranteed money because I thought that they gave him 36 guaranteed out of like 54 total.
Paulson Adebo, let's see.
And I did see a comment on there that the Bills did get that new deal done with Josh Allen. So yeah, that was key. We'll try to recap everything after this because the Bills have made a lot of moves in-house,
Yes,
but now is just trying to figure out what can they do out of house here with not just my targets here, but we'll go through Spot Track and try to go through the tracker. So getting back to Josh Palmer now. So I started by saying I will take half credit for this because I did list him last night, but I don't want to take full credit because I was really warmed up to the idea by Eric Turner of Cover One and Joe Marino because they were talking about this for a couple of weeks now and saying how good of an idea it would be for the Bills. And I was like, oh, you know what? I just kind of glossed over his name when I was going through the free agents. I was looking at Mike Clay's free agent tracker and even on Spot Track, I just never really sat with Josh Palmer. I just kept passing over his name. But then I saw Joe Marino was talking about him and Eric Turner. And I was like, you know what? This does kind of fit the mold that the Bills are looking for. A guy who is in that age range that we're talking about, right? 25 to 27 years old, hasn't really popped off yet. And you're thinking that you can get him at a pretty good rate. And then he's going to blossom here in Buffalo, specifically with Josh Allen as his quarterback. And then what Eric and Joe were saying is that he's a really good route runner and he can gain separation. And I was like, you know what? He's not that ultimate speed, deep threat burner that I think a lot of us are looking for. So that's why I was thinking maybe like a Tyler Lockett. And for what it's worth, Tyler Lockett quote tweeted Eric Turner's film room session. And he said, I appreciate all the love. So I was thinking maybe Tyler Lockett was an option. But ultimately, the Bills, their first move of free agency, they go the wide receiver route. I really thought I was going to be investing in the defense, but they kind of surprised me and a lot of others by going with the wide receiver here. And now I would like to think that they're probably done for now because, yeah, they could add some pieces. They could re-sign Matt Collins. I'm sure they're probably going to try to draft a wide receiver, but I don't see them signing a Brandon Cooks or a Tyler Lockett now, especially considering all the holes that they have on the defense, Pat.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think they're going to be adding to the offense anytime soon. I do think that they will be adding to the defense. I don't think it will be today. Hopefully it is while we're on air so we can break it live. But I do see something happening maybe tomorrow or even Wednesday. And I think maybe it's a corner because I know which corner was it that just got $8 million a year? Was it Jeremy Chin?
Jeremy Chin got $8 million. He was a safety with the Raiders. And then right before we came on, Javarius Ward went to the Colts, right?
Yes, he did. So I do think maybe
DJ Reed went to Detroit earlier because Carlton Davis went to New England. And those are all players who I thought were nice, but probably out of the Bills' price range just because the market just kept going up. And that's why we kind of settled on maybe Asante Samuel Jr., who you can get at that cost-controlled rate.
Right, and even your guy still there, Jonathan Jones, who it came out last night that he's going to test free agency.
Yes. So we will definitely get into that more. But getting back to Josh Palmer here. So if you could pull up that tweet here, Pat, I guess we'll start with me quote tweeting Joe Marino, who quote tweeted Eric Turner. And we can kind of go through that thread, and then we have some other interesting stats that we were retweeting here on Twitter, because I think this really could be a sneaky good addition. And actually, you know what? While you do that, let me pull up his box score stats, because that'll be our starting point. So let's take a look at what Josh Palmer has done just from a stereotypical perspective of yards, receptions, targets, touchdowns, and then we'll get more into the nitty gritty here. So as you can see, first year with the Chargers, 2021. He was from originally Brampton, Ohio, which is right outside of Toronto, so very close to Buffalo. And then he went to Tennessee. I can't remember exactly which round. I want to say he was a third-round draft pick in 21. But regardless, 2021 was his first year with the Chargers, and he had 33 catches for 353 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then probably his best season, 2022, 72 catches, 769 yards and 3 touchdowns. Missed about 6 games there in 2023, rebounded this past year. And I think the thing that I want to say about him is that he's had a lot of turnover, right? Because the Chargers went from Brandon Staley to Jim Harbaugh, and they had a lot of roster turnover. He's had 3 different offensive coordinators in 4 years. He has had Justin Herbert, but I don't know if he's been able to unlock his full potential, especially considering he used to have Keenan Allen and Mike Williams in front of him. So I feel like this is that classic example where you could look at this and say, I think the Bills are trying to find him at the right time. He could be one of those very underrated but solid signings where at first you say, $12 million a year for Josh Palmer. But by the end of it, it's like, oh, wow, Brandon Beane and his staff knew what they were doing. Oh, Pat, I think you're muted.
Oh, is that better? Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yep, that's a very good point that you brought up about how he was behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for the first 3 years of his career. And then last year, he was behind guys like Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston, and they were primarily a running team as well. So he hasn't been able to play to his full potential yet, being behind those guys and them being a run-first team last year.
Yeah, so I think it's important that you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, because, and someone did confirm that he was a third-round draft pick. So I just want to look at that, because I just want to make sure that he was out of Tennessee, right? Do you remember him at the time? Because he's one of those guys, that's what I mean, where he flies under the radar. I don't really remember scouting him 4 years ago. I don't really remember the Chargers drafting him and saying, oh, this is Josh Palmer. He's a really good wide receiver. So that's why I think when we talked about it with Asante Samuel Jr., so literally the same team, but the other side of the ball, same age range where you're trying to capitalize on that, the Bills went the wide receiver route with Josh Palmer, and they're saying, okay, Josh to Josh, here's a new duo. Mute it again, Pat.
Ooh, spend a minute. Yes, he did go to Tennessee as well. So
okay, yep.
Yeah, I don't remember really scouting him much. He's one of those names that flies under the radar. I know Kevin Messeri's not a big fan of the Curtis Samuel signing, but I was. I feel like this one's a better signing than the Curtis Samuel signing.
Yep, and now as Spin says, we still need a field stretcher. So that kind of ties into what I was just going to say here. So when I quote tweeted Joe Marino, if you can find that, Pat,
yep,
I said that he's not the ultimate speed option. He's not that field stretcher down the field, right? Can't really take the top off the defense. Yep. Okay, so I'll just read it word for word. So he does not have the ultimate speed to be a burner down the field. His 40 time was a 4.52, and his AAV of $12 million is more than I expected. But he is a great route runner who uses that skill set to gain separation, and he has good size with that 6'1", 210-pound frame. And if you click on Joe's tweet, Pat, you can see he was number 11 in the NFL in route win percentage against man coverage and number 12 in separation score. And it's about a 45-second clip from Eric Turner just showing some of his routes and his clips. And you can see that he's not going to just necessarily stretch the field and just burn you down the field. But because of that physicality, and he has good hands as well, that's how he can win. He gains that separation. He knows how to use his body to his advantage. And that's why I just think that he's one of those sneaky wide receivers who can put up some numbers, but really I think he's going to fit into that everybody eats mentality, because that's the difference between a Josh Palmer and a DK Metcalf. That's why I didn't want DK Metcalf, because I didn't want to get back to paying a wide receiver $30 million. Yeah, I know I just said that $12 million is maybe an overpay, but considering how I think the Bills are going to use him, I think this is that niche role that the Bills wanted to carve out here.
And no, I definitely do agree with you that he does fit into that everybody eats mentality. And like we spoke on a couple minutes ago, he was behind some very good wide receivers again: Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, McConkey, and Quentin Johnston. Now Josh Allen spreads the ball around, so I'm very interested to see what he can do in this offense, especially on the boundary, because I feel like that's one thing that we were missing last year was a true boundary receiver. Because we have guys like Shakir and Samuel, guys that play in the slot, along with Kincaid, who can play in the slot too. So I felt like we were very crowded in the slot, and we didn't have enough boundary depth. I know we brought in Amari Cooper pretty late, but with that whole wrist injury, he wasn't effective. And then same thing with Keon Coleman.
Well, you know what? If you want to pull up the next tweet that I had there, because I retweeted a couple of advanced analytics. So while you do that, I'll speak on the wide receiver room a little bit more, because I think a lot of people are saying this is what the Bills were lacking. They needed that true boundary receiver who can be that separator down the field. And I think it's important to note, because when you think of separation, you think of speed. And I feel like everyone's still caught up on the Xavier Worthy thing. Maybe not anymore after that arrest. But just in terms of last year with the draft, and you're thinking you want the speed, you want the separation. And Palmer isn't that burner, as we've been saying here. But again, he knows how to get open. And I think that's what the Bills have been lacking, as these stats will show.
Yep. And I have it right here. Oh, there we go.
So yeah, if you were to click on that left one there, you can see the separation rate between Palmer and the rest of the Bills wide receivers in 2024. So I think everyone can see that, but just in case. So his win rate was 19.7%. And then you look at the Bills wide receivers here and tight ends, because they do have Kincaid on there and Knox. Amari Cooper was 12.8%. And then you go down, Keon Coleman, 12.5. You go all the way down. Khalil Shakir, as great as Khalil Shakir is, 7.7%. And you can just see some of these advanced numbers here, where Josh Palmer, I think, is going to turn out to be one of those Brandon Beane signings where it's like, okay, you know what you were doing once again, and this is why we're not the GM of the Buffalo Bills. I could be wrong, because I think it's important to note we'll have to see what the details of the contract are. But as of now, based on average annual value, you're giving Josh Palmer and Curtis Samuel $20 million. So is that going to be enough, especially considering the holes on defense? So, like, I don't think that this is a needle mover, but I just want to be patient, because I think there's more moves to be made. And by no means are the Bills done on either side of the ball. But I think for the wide receivers, we might be done with free agency. Draft one, maybe you can sign a lower tier free agent, and I hope that they can re-sign Matt Collins. But in terms of going after that bigger target, this was it. Like, I think Josh Palmer is the Amari Cooper replacement. Would you agree?
I do agree. I know I was texting a few friends earlier about, do the Bills bring back Amari Cooper, or do they bring in a guy like Josh Palmer? Which they end up bringing in a guy like Josh Palmer. I don't think that they're going to go out and sign a Amari Cooper now. Maybe Matt Collins. But I did see a tweet that said if you combine Matt Collins and Keon Coleman's stats last year, it's almost 900 receiving yards. So now I wonder, we're bringing in a guy like Josh Palmer, if Matt Collins' workload, they're going to try to push it onto Keon Coleman.
Well, speaking of Coleman, so the other stat that I have here is, this is from Fantasy Points data. So they say that Josh Palmer gives the Bills a much-needed weapon versus man coverage. Buffalo's average separation score ranks against man among 131 qualifying players. So Keon Coleman was 54th, Matt Collins was 71st, Khalil Shakir was 82nd, and Dalton Kincaid was 86th. Josh Palmer was 8th. So when you're talking about that separation, that really gives some context when a guy like Khalil Shakir, someone we love, and he is just so savvy, and we think he's a great route runner. Well, when Josh Palmer is 8 and Shakir is 82nd, again, we really might be looking at this deal in a few years and saying, wow, that is so much better than giving DK Metcalf $30 million. And of course, DK Metcalf is a great player. I'm not trying to take away from that, but I'm just talking about trying to find the right player for the right play, for the right price, because in terms of the cap, it's kind of hard to say right now because as of last night, the Bills were probably $1 million over the cap. And that was according to Over the Cap and Spot Track. And that didn't necessarily factor Greg Rousseau's extension and then Josh Allen's new deal. Now, we talked about if Josh got that extension, that could open up $12 million. Sal Capaccio was saying, who knows, maybe because this is technically a new deal, he is signed through 2030. So they ripped up 4 years of that contract. So technically they extended 2 years of it, but it really is a new deal. So that could really be $20 million in cap space. And then I think that did include Von Miller's release on there when they said that they're $1 million over. But then we learned today that Greg Rousseau's extension saved $8 million. So I'm projecting right now that the Bills have somewhere between $10 to $20 million in cap space, and we'll see what Josh Palmer's figures come out to be.
And right before we do talk about this route percentage and everything with Josh Palmer, I do want to bring up a good point that we saw it in the Ravens game in the divisional round. Our receivers had a hard time separating. Now, just imagine how much easier that game would have been offensively if we had a guy like Josh Palmer.
Well, as everyone can see on the screen here, I don't need to go through those word for word, so you can read those. And while you do that, I'll just read some other stats that we found. And I think this is very underrated because he's played Kansas City multiple times in his career because, division opponent. And I'm looking through some of his game-by-game stats, and he's had some very successful games against Kansas City. And I think that's been something that the Bills have been looking for, too, because as much as we talk about the defense, you got to get Mahomes on the ground. You got to figure out a way to keep them to under 30 points. Well, we also know how the Bills have wanted separation, too, and just being able to give Josh that other weapon for that 2-minute drive when you're trying to go down and get a field goal, right? So some of these numbers that really popped were back in 2022. So this was the last game because they played on September 15th and, he scored. So we'll talk about that one too. So his 2 games against Chiefs in 2022, 4 catches, 30 yards and a touchdown, 8 catches, 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he really ate in 2022. Then in 23, it looks like he just played 1 game because I believe he was hurt for that other one. So 5 catches, 133 yards. And then this past season, you know what? It turned into 2024. That's what it was because they played on January 7th. So that was 6 for 44. And then this past year, December 8th, he went 6 for 78. So he's really played pretty well against Kansas City. And again, that is considering the Keenan Allens and the Mike Williams and Ladd McConkey's. So he's had other players around him. So I think that speaks volumes for what he could potentially do for the Bills.
Yeah, no, I definitely love what he brings to the table, especially in that aspect too, of a guy who's familiar with that Kansas City defense. And I know the Bills team is already familiar with that, but getting another insight, another set of eyes is really, I think that's pretty underrated part.
All right, well, I think that is enough on Josh Palmer for now. Obviously, you are welcome to comment with anything else, but I do want to talk about some of these other players. I mean, we kind of opened up the show talking about some other targets and just how many moves have been made so far. I mean, I haven't even checked my phone. Do we have other breaking news? Have you seen anything, Pat?
I have not seen anything else since the whole Charvarius Ward signing with the Colts.
Well, Ari Mirov just tweeted the top remaining free agents. So I guess let's take a look at those. If you want to pull up Spot Track and we can just go through some of the moves that have been made and talk about how that relates to the Bills. So I guess we'll start with Trey Hendrickson because we had a question about that earlier. So I don't know. Do we think that this is one of those nights, being after dark will strike, and it's going to be 11 o'clock and all of a sudden the Bills have acquired Trey Hendrickson? Because it seems like it's too quiet for Buffalo right now. They have way too many holes on this defense to just sit back and take it into the draft. Because a lot of these defensive tackles have been getting scooped up. So there are some pass rushers. So I guess if you want to start there with the Spot Track, we'll just go through the defensive linemen because that was the main position of need. Sure, you could say that they needed a wide receiver, but everyone could be in agreement going into the offseason, going back from the Kansas City loss, watching the Super Bowl, you have to bolster this defensive line. And to our knowledge, nothing has been done yet. I'm sure they've had some conversations, but nothing has really come across yet. So as we wait for those here, if anyone in the comments wants to, relay something to us about someone that you would like to see the Bills sign, or maybe something that has happened in the last few minutes, maybe something that we missed. But as we look at this here, are these okay? Defensive ends. Now, are there the ones? These are the remaining ones. Do you have the ones?
Yes, these are the
these
are the remaining.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, signed with.
Yeah, I mean, either way, if you want to start here, we can. Draymond
Yeah, let's start
Jones. Here. Okay. So Draymond Jones, nice defensive end, but it might be too much money. But considering that they missed out on, let's just say, a Josh Sweat, and people were saying, well, they could have afforded that, right? Is Draymond Jones someone that maybe the Bills could sign?
Potentially, but I think the Bills might want to go a little bit of a cheaper option. I still think that the Bills are gonna, if they can't land a Trey Hendrickson, they're gonna take it to the draft. Unless they can get a guy maybe like a Chase Young who had a high RAS score. I know Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott love the guys with high RAS scores.
No one's really popping out to me right here. So like DeMarcus Lawrence,
nobody.
He had some really nice seasons for Dallas, but that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I believe he's battled through some injuries the last few years. He's 32 years old, almost 33 for that matter. I don't really want to sign DeMarcus Lawrence. Larry Ogunjobi, yeah, maybe some position flexibility. Chase Young, to your point, I've never been a Chase Young fan because I think he's lazy. I think he takes plays off and he never lived up to his potential. I feel like he's another Jadeveon Clowney. Charles Omenihu, I guess, maybe, but see, like all these guys, Raekwon Davis, DeMarcus Walker, didn't Walker sign? I thought I saw that. I guess not. Maybe, well, Chicago did sign Deo. I don't even know how to say his name from the Colts. Maybe that's the one
from the Colts, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he signed.
Dietrich Wise. I mean, maybe that could be a defensive end, maybe a cheaper option. But yeah, if they don't trade for Trey Hendrickson, this market really dried up pretty quickly.
It really did. I mean, I'm continuing to go down to get guys like Linval Joseph, Dwayne Smoot, but nobody here really stands out. I really do believe Brandon Beane has to go trade for a guy like Trey Hendrickson because I don't think any of these guys are the true impact player that we talked about the last several weeks.
Yeah, so why don't you pull up the other side and we'll discuss some of the players who have signed so far.
All right, here we go. Oh.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so we have defensive tackles and defensive ends?
Yes.
Perfect. So Milton Williams, I thought he would have been a great addition, but I also thought he was going to get way too much money, and sure enough, he got $26 million per year. No, thank you. Josh Sweat, this one is one where, yeah, for less than $20 million a year, I would have taken a swing at that.
I would have too.
And then this was Deo again.
Deo Odebo. Sorry. Yeah, he got 16 million. Yeah, he got 16 million.
Yep. Speaking of Chicago, they picked up Grady Jarrett, who was released from Atlanta, so he got a pretty nice deal. Poona Ford went from one side of the stadium to the other. I don't know why it was so hard for him to get on the field for the Bills because he really ate it up for the Chargers last year.
That's really frustrating too. I wish we would have been able to play him more to see his full potential. I mean, he was a healthy scratch for us, and now he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league.
Yep. Malcolm Kuntz, I thought he was someone who could be underrated, a former UB player. He re-signed with the Raiders, as did Adam Butler, as we mentioned here. So he's off the board. Roy Robertson Harris, I mean, I was never that big of a fan for him. Sebastian Joseph Day, I was a big fan for him. So as you can see, I mean, a lot of these guys have been signed, and there's plenty of others here if you were to scroll down.
Oh, is
after
that
this
it?
Joel Embiid ad.
I know, right? Okay.
Are there not
Derek
more?
Barnett. I don't think there is. Derek Barnett got 5. Sheldon Rankins got 7.
Well, there has to
Is
be
there not
more.
more?
I mean, this is probably just not listed. I guess we can, while we try to find more, let's talk about Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, because I tweeted Thursday, I think, or maybe it was Friday. Would you do this deal for Myles Garrett? You give up this year's first round pick, next year's first round pick, the extra second from the Diggs trade, and a 6th for Myles Garrett and a 7th. And at first, I was like, I guess people don't like this. But then I realized it was really split. It was pretty much like 50-50, maybe 55-45. And I was like, you know what? That probably shows how that is a very good trade proposal when you have just as many people saying yes as no. Because if it
Right.
was bad, everyone would have let you know. If it was good, everyone
Right.
would have said, yeah, of course I would take it. But if you can get that even split, I was like, maybe that's actually a really good deal. And for what it's worth, a couple of Browns fans that follow me said, yes, like we would do this. And other Bills fans were saying, no, that's way too much. And then you had people in the middle and said, yeah, it might be a lot, but I'm still going to do it because it's Myles Garrett. And he kept saying, I want to play for a contender. I don't want to be here anymore. Please trade me. And then they had that awkward moment with Jimmy Haslam, and they didn't meet with Myles Garrett. And then all of a sudden, richest contract in NFL history for a non-quarterback. So, I mean, what were your thoughts on that, Pat? Because I was pretty bummed out that they missed out on Garrett and Max Crosby. But at the same time, I'm not trying to pay a defensive end $35-40 million.
Yeah, no, I definitely would have done that. I would have accepted that trade proposal that you just said. But I know Myles Garrett's arguably one of the best non-quarterbacks in the NFL players in the NFL that are non-quarterbacks. But at the same time, paying him $40 million, that's a lot of money. I would rather, get a guy like Josh Sweat and let's say Asante Samuel Jr. There's 2 guys that you can pay each. You can pay 20. I know Asante Samuel Jr.'s market value is 11.6, but I'm just saying you can get more. You can get more players than just paying Myles Garrett just 40. But Myles Garrett is that true impact player, so I guess you really have to decide if he's worth the 40 million, which I do believe he is. But every team has, like the Browns can afford that right now. I don't think that would have been a good fit for Buffalo, especially paying him 40. Maybe Myles Garrett at 30. I'm not Myles Garrett, Max Crosby at 30. I would have been more okay with. But we all know once Max Crosby signed that, Myles Garrett's next contract was going to reset it.
So that's the thing. That was my standpoint on it, because I understood both sides. But to what we were saying the last couple of weeks, you're trying to find players who are going to amount to Myles Garrett, right? Like you want to find someone who's going to amount to that level of talent and productivity. And I don't know if you're going to find another player like that at pick number 30, because those are 2 late first round picks. And the last time the Bills had pick number 30, they got Greg Rousseau. And I really like Greg Rousseau, but he has 8 to 10 sacks a year. I want someone who's going to get 15 to 20. So that's why I was willing to part with those picks, because I don't know if you're going to find a combination of players who can add up to what you would get with Myles Garrett. Because if you're in win now mode, Josh Allen is not getting any younger, right? So like if you have a prime Josh Allen and you have a prime Myles Garrett, then put the 2 together and F those picks, right? Forget those picks for the time being, just because I understand you want to win now and in the future. But look at Brandon Beane's track record of drafting in the first round, especially when it comes to defensive linemen, or second round for that matter. AJ Epinesa, Boogie Basham, right? I mean, these are okay players. Basham didn't work out. Epinesa's been solid, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I do see your point though. I would have liked if we would have gotten a guy like Myles Garrett. Hey, maybe we could still trade for Trey Hendrickson tonight. Being after dark is real, which I do believe that every time we have had a big need, like Stephon Diggs back in 2020, we needed that true wide receiver to help Josh Allen in his development. Brandon Beane went out and got it. We needed a premier pass rusher. We went out and got it in Von Miller. Unfortunately, due to injuries and everything, it didn't work out. Now we are kind of in the same boat. We only have who's on our roster right now: Javon Solomon, Greg Rousseau, and AJ Epinesa, as far as the DNs go. So there is room for one more, and I do believe that Brandon Beane is trying to get Trey Hendrickson. But my only question is Cincinnati willing to trade Trey Hendrickson to Buffalo. Because we all know what they think about Buffalo and Kansas City. I think they look at us as rivals, as they should. Because I mean, we are a top. All three teams are top contending in the AFC.
Well, it is a fair question, but the point of a trade is you're trying to make it as equal as possible. I mean, if you can win the trade, then great, right? Like that's everyone's goal. You want to win the trade. But when it comes down to it, you're trying to make it as equal as possible. So you say, okay, well, yeah, we're going to give you Trey Hendrickson, but you're going to give us X, Y, and Z for draft picks, and that's going to help us in return. So maybe if you want to pull up over the cap and we can put in, I think if you were to just search trade calculator from over the cap, we can look at what could be feasible here, because I did find some other free agents here on Spot Track. So I'll just read these out loud, because it's kind of weird, because sometimes they list them as linebackers. So I think that's why we forgot that.
That's probably why.
Like where'd the rest of the edge rushers go? Like Joey Bosa, Von Miller, right? Like those guys are listed as outside linebackers, even though they're mainly edge rushers. So I'm just going to read through these. Joey Bosa, Von Miller, Draymond Jones, who we mentioned, Matthew Judon, DeMarcus Lawrence, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith. So those are the big ones, right? I knew that there were more. So they are all listed here as outside linebackers. Jerome Baker, I thought he was a middle linebacker, but they have him as an outside linebacker. So I don't know why he's grouped in with these guys, but that's really it for me. Kayvon Chason, I saw some people were talking about him, Dante Fowler Jr., but then you can see that there's a drop-off. Shaq Thompson, they have him listed as an outside linebacker. Josh Uche, I don't know. None of those guys really do it for me. So I think if the Bills were to look for a pass rusher, I think you would have to look at one of these guys, right? And I'm looking at Zadarius Smith or Matthew Judon. And I will say I'm not totally out on Von Miller, because they could just bring him back on a totally different contract. But considering that there's a lot of dead cap, I believe that they would have saved more money if they would have just given him a straight up pay cut rather than releasing him, because they saved 8.4 against the cap. I believe it was Kevin Masseri who said that they could save $11 million if they not necessarily restructured his deal, but if they just kind of ripped it up. And I don't know all the gymnastics behind it, but basically you could have saved more money to try to rework that deal. So because of that, I'm thinking that they're probably just going to let him go at this point and not bring him back. But I would be open to it as long as they can supplement it with something else.
I would definitely be okay with bringing back Von Miller. But in the AFC Championship game, I don't know if he was dealing with an injury, but I thought he was going to play more than what he did. I know against Baltimore he didn't play that much because they are a run-first team. But I was kind of disappointed to see Von Miller not play a majority of the snaps in the AFC Championship game, considering that's why we brought him in. And he did lead the NFL in pass rush win rate or QB pressure since week 11. So I think he still has something left in the tank.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact numbers. I know he was tops in terms of pressure. Like he was getting off the line very quickly, and I think he got back to that 2022 form. Obviously, that injury had a big toll on him.
It did.
So again, I would be open to it, especially considering how the market is just starting to not get that dry. But again, you're seeing how a lot of these bad teams are just throwing money in wheelbarrow fulls and saying, hey, Milton Williams, here's $26 million a year because we have over 130 in cap space. So here you go. And
yeah, just kind of
just have that.
Right. Just like Jacksonville a couple years ago with Christian Kirk. The bad teams, I saw a lot of Bills fans saying, oh, Brandon Beane, where's our moves? These bad teams have to overpay, so they're going to be willing to throw more money at these guys to persuade them to come play with them.
Yes. So, okay, now that we have this up here, the trade calculator. So let's put in Trey Hendrickson and see what the Fitzgerald Spielberger evaluation says here. So we'll just do straight up Trey Hendrickson. We won't ask for any more draft picks.
Okay. And what would we
let's
give up?
Let's start with the second from Minnesota, right?
So that'll be what, 56?
Yep.
Okay.
So now I don't know exactly all like the terms behind this and what they use to evaluate here. but they're saying that the Bills would win, obviously. So the Bengals would want more. So want to try the first this year too? Should we do pick
Yes.
30?
Wow.
Okay.
It doesn't say how many points the Bengals have with Trey Hendrickson. It says for, our second round pick is worth 960. Our first round pick is worth 1,276. It doesn't say how many points Trey Hendrickson is worth.
Yeah, again, I'm not an expert on this, but I used it for the Myles Garrett trade scenario that I proposed. And for what it's worth, it said that it was very even. And really the only difference was they said that if I was a GM of the Bills and I gave Minnesota's pick, right? Then Cleveland would win the trade. But if the Bills could afford to just say, you know what, we're gonna give you pick 62 instead, then that's when it would flip.
Let's see what it still has Buffalo winning. Oh, Zach Wilson did go to Miami, by the way.
Zach Wilson to Miami.
Yes, and the Browns will be releasing Dalvin Tomlinson. And Tier Tart just signed a deal with the Chargers.
Wasn't he with the Chargers?
A 1-year deal.
I think Tier Tart played with the Chargers. At least
with the Chargers or Houston or Tennessee. The Panthers are signing to Sean Wharton to a 3-year deal worth $54 million.
Started to come in.
Oh, especially we're just talking about the defensive line too, right on cue.
Yes, there it is. So, hey, we'll use this time to say almost 1,100 people are in here. So, want to thank everyone who is tuning in here. Maybe, we're getting you through some dinner right now. Or if you are catching us back on the playback, we appreciate that as well. Once again, this is Kevin Siracuse with Pat Bruknis here on the Built in Buffalo channel. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe to our channel. And, of course, follow us on Twitter. Now, we do have a comment here from Chris saying a second and a fifth. So that could be pretty feasible. So why don't we put in
there we go
5th round pick, because the Bills do have 2 fifths.
Yep, we gave them number 171 overall, and this is with our 2nd round pick. And now here it is with Minnesota's 2nd round pick.
Okay.
Still has us winning in both ways.
Now add the 1st round pick to that. See how much it swings.
Wow.
Now they still have okay. They're saying the Bills are still the winner here?
Does it go by average per year? Because let's see if we add just this second. Okay, that's what it goes by, average per year. Because now look, 25 million sending.
They're saying that the Bills are going to have to give a 1st, 2 seconds, and a 5th for the Bengals to want to make that trade. Now, I think that's too much. That's way too much.
That's way too much, especially for a player who's on his last year of his deal.
Yeah, and he's going to want at least $30 million.
Yeah.
I saw a report that said he's not going to command 40 like Myles Garrett, but he's going to at least want that first digit to be a 3.
That Max Crosby money, which I was okay paying for Max Crosby or Myles Garrett. So I would be okay with paying that for Trey Hendrickson. And he has spoke pretty highly of Ryan Nielsen as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Well, yeah, so they had time together in New Orleans, and Ryan Nielsen is directly going to correlate and influence that defensive line. He's going to work with the Bills' defensive line this year. So if you're trying to connect the dots there, like I did with Jonathan Jones and coming over to the Bills' secondary with Mike Pellegrino, you could connect those same dots and say that maybe this is why the Bills would – another reason why they'd want to go after Hendrickson, who has 35 sacks over the last 2 years, 17.5 in both years. And I think the Bengals really played the market wrong because they waited way too long on T. Higgins. They waited way too long on Jamar Chase. And now they've waited way too long with Trey Hendrickson. So I think they're at least going to want to get Jamar Chase done. But then, I mean, what are they going to do with Hendrickson and or Higgins?
They waited too long on Jesse Bates as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. There
was Cincinnati was pretty late to the party with every player.
Yep. And Duke Tobin said at the NFL Combine, he was like, yeah, we're going to make Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in league history. And then all these teams are like, huh, okay, couldn't have said that because we're just going to make our player the highest paid player and we're going to reset the market. And then you're going to have to spend an extra $10-15 million.
Yeah. Maybe by the time, if Cincinnati does re-sign Jamar Chase It could be 50.
Okay, so I want to go back to this calculator here
Okay.
because I want to try to put some new numbers in because I feel like I was reading it wrong at first. So as you can see, just so we're on the same page here, to find the winner, you go to the top there. So the Fitzgerald-Spielberger
Yep.
evaluation right there. The winner is right there where Pat is highlighting. I'm not necessarily going to focus too much on the points gained or the APY gained because I won't be the best at explaining it. So I just want to see what they're going to say in terms of who the winner of this trade is. So let's give them this year's first.
Okay.
And then next year's first, just for the heck of it. Let's see, 2 first-round picks. They're saying that the Bills would win that trade. Now, I guess add in one of this year's seconds. So, okay, so essentially,
ours.
you know what?
Okay,
Essentially, let's put in the same trade that I put in for Myles Garrett, right? 2 firsts and a second.
Right. And this would be with Minnesota's second.
So they're saying the Bengals would win. Now, here is where, now again, there were some later draft picks there. Okay, it did it again. See? So there is that big difference from giving them pick 56 to 62, where if you give them 56, the Bengals would win the trade. And with Myles Garrett, the Browns would win that trade. But if you can convince them, hey, just take 62 instead, they're saying that the Bills would win that trade.
Oh, no, they have the Bengals winning it.
Did I say that wrong?
Yeah, they have the Bengals winning it, even if we were to give them 62 instead of 56.
But what happened on 56, though?
It still has Cincinnati winning.
Oh, I thought I saw that the Bills were winning that.
No. Yep, Cincinnati and Cincinnati. I think it goes by the AP, the average per year, the APY. Because look, when we take off the second, it has us winning with only 17 million. But when we add it, it has Cincinnati winning because they're giving up less money. Is that what it goes by?
Throw in one of those. The Bills have 3 6th-round picks. Why don't you throw in one of those and see how that changes it?
It has. Yep.
Okay. Now take away 56 and put in 62. Okay. So, I mean, as you can see, it's kind of hard to come up with the exact trade because clearly you don't want to give up your draft picks. And I don't know exactly what they're using here because I don't think, because wasn't it Jonathan Jones who kind of refuted that report and said, I never said that it'll take a late day 2 pick. Like the Bengals are going to want more for Trey Hendrickson. So there's been a little bit of misreporting here about what would actually be required to get Trey Hendrickson. But according to this, I mean, you're going to have to give up a little bit more than what's been reported.
Right. And I added Cincinnati's 3rd-round pick. And the average per year, the APY, is pretty even. It's only 400,000 off. This looks pretty fair.
I think this was a tweet here. Per CBS Sports, the Bengals are seeking a 2nd-round pick or a high 3rd-round pick for star edge rusher Trey Hendrickson. I think that was one that Jonathan Jones said. I never said that. So that one wasn't true. So if we were to just give them pick 56, I mean, I think that they would probably laugh, right? At least according to this. So take away everything but pick 56 and see what it looks like.
Yeah, they would laugh.
Yeah.
They would probably most likely laugh. I think it's probably going to take maybe this year's second, next year's first. But again, I think if we were to do that, Brandon Beane would want to work out a contract extension with Trey Hendrickson because he's not going to give up this draft value for 1 year.
That's the thing. I mean, you don't want to make it a 1-year rental, so you want to extend him, but at what cost, right?
Right. Now, Kevin, what number would you be comfortable paying Trey Hendrickson?
He's going to want at least 30, right? So I guess if we're saying that we're comfortable paying Myles Garrett or Max Crosby that, you're going to have to go around that at least for Hendrickson, right? I don't want to back down just because, well, we didn't get Myles Garrett, So that's way too much money, because then I would sound like a hypocrite, because I was just saying, I don't care. Spend the money, because that's what it
Right.
takes.
Right.
I think Hendrickson is probably like one of those 1B pass rushers. So if Myles Garrett was 1A and Max Crosby, like those are elite, right? Top of the top.
Right.
And there's a slight drop off, and it's Hendrickson, but that's not that big. So I guess in terms of cap hits, if Myles Garrett is 40 a year, or at least average annual value, right? So if Crosby and Garrett around 35, 40, I think Hendrickson is going to want at least 30 to 35, right?
I would believe so. And I just wonder if there's a way Brandon Beane could work that contract and maybe backload it, kind of like what we did with Von Miller in a way. Where it's not so hard on the cap in the first 2 years. Maybe it's a 3-year extension.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely ways that they can go about this, and that's why Brandon Beane is an elite GM. Because, I mean, look at all those extensions with Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, Greg Rousseau. I mean, that is the epitome of locking up your own, right? You want to draft, develop, and then re-sign. And that's what Brandon Beane has been doing, and he's been ahead of the curve, because we were just talking about Duke Tobin. He waits a year or two too late. Brandon Beane is doing it a year or two early. So I think that is the difference between the Bills and the Bengals here. But yeah, I'm just not sure how the Bills would want to go about it.
I mean, he is 30 years old, 3-year contract, put him at 33 or 34 if you include this year. Defensive linemen typically last until they're 35, 36. There's a few players that are like that. Look at Von Miller, Khalil Mack, who just got 18.
Yeah, I mean, people are saying, well, look at Von Miller. You just overpaid for him. And really, when it was all said and done, that contract wasn't as bad as it seemed, because, again, there are ways to go around it.
Right.
So I think that the Bills did pay him. Did I see that it was like 3 years, $48 million that they actually gave out to Von?
48 or 43, somewhere along.
So it really wasn't as bad as that 6 for 120 as we thought 3 years ago. And that was the whole premise of that deal. There was an opt-out after year 3, which was right now. So you knew that there was a way to get out of it, right?
Yeah, right. Typically, it was a 3-year deal, which that's what a lot of people thought it was going to be when we first signed him, and that's what it ended up being.
Okay, so before we move off of Hendrickson and look at some of these other moves, we'll try to wrap it up by about 7 o'clock here. It's 6:41 p.m. Eastern time here. Pat is on Central time.
Yes. We did just get a move. The Vikings signed former Colts center Ryan Kelly to a 2-year deal.
Okay, solid move right there.
Yeah.
And in other news, Garrett Cole is undergoing Tommy John surgery, and he's going to miss the whole 2025 season. So that is great for a Yankees fan like me, he said sarcastically. Giancarlo Stanton might need surgery on both of his elbows. Luis Hill is out for a while. This is just great.
The season hasn't even started yet.
Yep. So I think the same point can be made for really any of these teams, but if there are any Yankees and Bills fans out there, you have to capitalize on those moments, because the Yankees were in the World Series and you never know when you're going to get that close again. And I go back to Dan Campbell's quote. Remember when the Lions lost the NFC Championship, and he was like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, it takes so much to get back to this moment. That's why it hurts and it stings so much. That's why for Bills fans, like, it stings when you get to the AFC Championship game, because as much as you think, oh, well, this was a reset year and we're going to retool and we're going to be back better than ever. You get Myles Garrett, you get Trey Hendrickson, as we're, trying to show right here. A lot can happen, and you don't know. Like, that's not a promise. That's not a guarantee that you're going to be back playing for the AFC Championship or for the AFC title in the last week of January.
You're right. And, I'm a Cubs fan. So, back in 2016, we thought we were on the brink of a dynasty with all of our young guys, and we only won one. And it's hard to get back. It really is hard to get back, no matter how good your team is. There's a lot of things that have to happen to have a deep playoff run.
You guys broke the curse, so at least there's that, right?
Almost 9 years ago. November will be 9 years since that.
That is crazy.
We haven't won a playoff game since 2017, but that's a different topic.
Okay, so before we switch over here and just talk about the other free agents on the board, again, comment if you have one final trade proposal that you want to see us put in here. Pat, maybe if you We can remove it from the screen, but we can just kind of leave it in the background just in case. So again, if you guys want to see a trade, maybe you want to see us throw some picks in there again, something that you haven't seen, or maybe you're just hopping on, we'll pull it back up for you. So as I'm looking at this list here, I'm going to go back to defensive tackle. So do any of these names sound intriguing to you? Raekwon Davis, Austin Johnson, Greg Gaines, John Jenkins, Jerry Tillery. I think he retired. Linval Joseph, as you mentioned, Jonathan Hankins, Derek Noddy, Taven Bryan, Jeremiah Ledbetter, Benito Jones. No one's really sticking out to me now.
Maybe Derek Noddy just for his size. If I'm thinking of the right player, that's the guy who played for the Chiefs, right? He's a big body. He's a one tech. But I would rather draft a guy who has, who's younger. I don't know. None of those guys really stand out.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like now I'm going to have some recency bias, especially because like these were my guys, but Adam Butler, Sebastian Joseph Day, right? Like those were players who I just thought were objectively in the Bills' range because they weren't going to command $26 million like Milton Williams. But those are the players who are now off the shelf. And I don't want to settle for Taven Bryan or just Greg Gaines. Like, yeah, those could be rotational pieces, but how's Greg Gaines any different from Jordan Phillips or Quentin Jefferson? Because at that rate, you might as well just bring back Big Phil.
Yeah, right. And that's what I don't want to do. We've ran it back with the same guys, and we have seen it, the same story over and over again. Come playoff time against Kansas City, our pass rush is nowhere to be found. It's MIA. And I just want to bring in a new group. That's why I don't want to bring back guys like Big Phil. I love what he did for us and guys like Dwayne Smoot. And just I want to start fresh on the defensive line. Just go get some new guys. And because I don't want to bring back the same guys and have watched the same story for another year.
Yep. So Sheldon Rankins, not sure if we mentioned him. He went from Cincinnati to Houston. TJ Slayton went from Green Bay to Cincinnati. That could be a sneaky good one too. Grady Jarrett, as we mentioned, went from Atlanta to Chicago. Roy Robertson Harris from Seattle to the Giants. Javon Kinlaw from the Jets to the Commanders. And then Milton Williams, the big fish, went from Philly to New England. And there were some that were re-signed as well. I'm not sure if all those are listed on here. I don't think so because I don't see my man Adam Butler.
Speaking of the Bengals, they are closing in on a deal for Eagles linebacker Oren Burks.
Oh, okay. He used to be with the Packers, right?
I believe so. We do have a question here from JW. Hey, fellas, how much would it cost to acquire huh?
Oh, I was just reading it. So Rashid Shaheed.
Yes.
Well, I guess we could put that in if you want to.
Yes, we can. I will work on that right now.
We do have over the cap up still.
Yes, we do.
And then while you did that, just to go off of Spin's point here, I'm not saying don't get Hendrickson. I'm just saying I would have wanted Sweat over trying to go for Hendrickson. I think that's a good point because if Sweat was less than $20 million per year, I haven't done all the math yet to see exactly what his AAV is, but I would have much rather taken Josh Sweat for that price and Trey Hendrickson for over $30 million, right? I know Josh Sweat hasn't had like that production where he's getting 15 to 20 sacks every season, but I think there's some upside and he's younger. So especially if they have to give up that draft capital for Hendrickson, I'm kind of with Spin here where it's like, maybe you should have just signed Josh Sweat for that matter.
I'm having the hardest time finding Rashid Shaheed on here.
On the Saints?
Yes.
Well, he's not a free agent.
No, he's not. Oh, I found him. Okay. We're good.
Okay.
All right, let's pull this back. Okay, we got to pull it up here.
So Shaheed. Yeah.
What are you thinking, Kevin? The second?
I don't even know. Like, what do you want to start with?
Let's start with the fourth. Let's shoot low. Wow, a fourth has the Saints winning.
Yeah, that's too high.
Yeah, that's too high.
Fifth? Try one of those fifths right there.
Let's try 171. Okay, this says Buffalo winning.
Okay, so that's probably what you're looking at. Fifth or a sixth, maybe? Try a six just for the heck of it.
Yeah, let's try 178. Has Buffalo winning.
What are the points gained from it? So that's minus 374. What's that 5th round pick? If you go, just do the one right above it at 175.
Okay, so let's take that off. Go there, 383.
Okay, so it didn't move that much. Oh yeah, because that's right at the end of the 5th round,
Right.
anyways. So yeah, that's probably what you're looking at is a late 5th, early 6th. But that's the
Maybe a
first
pick
time I've
swap
ever
too.
heard of his name in trade rumors. I guess it could happen. You never know with the Saints. I just don't see the Bills addressing anyone else or anything else in the wide receiver room now, other than maybe re-signing Mac Hollins, right? And then just probably taking it to the draft and trying to find a speedy field stretcher in rounds 4, 5, or 6, right?
Well, there's a comment earlier that I saw about a guy, Elijah Moore. He's a speedster. He's a guy who I think has 4.3 speed. And credit to Matt. I know Matt talked about him a couple times. But he's a guy who has yet to play with a good quarterback. He was stuck with guys like Zach Wilson, Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson. The best quarterback he's played with is most likely Jameis Winston. So you get a 4.3 guy in here, burner, with Josh Allen's arm. I would like to take that chance, and he'll be pretty cheap too.
Yeah, I'm thinking for the time being, I'm not even going to look at wide receivers. So let's talk about the corner position, because that's one that we haven't really talked about too much.
Yes.
Because I guess we'll just start with 3 of our top targets, right? So Paulson Adebo signed with the Giants.
Yep.
Then you have Asante Samuel Jr., who's out there, and Jonathan Jones, as long as nothing broke in the last few minutes here that I'm unaware of. So you and Kevin were big Asante Samuel guys. Do you want to just fill us in about why you think that would make sense to get the 25-year-old to pair with Christian Benford, assuming that is another transaction that comes into play here, that the Bills can extend Christian Benford before that gets too much, because J.C. Horn got that big extension with the Panthers today, $25 million. He kind of reset the market for the corners.
Yeah, no, hopefully Brandon Beane does jump on Christian Benford before James Cook. At least that's what I hope. Yeah, but I like Asante Samuel because he was playing at a very high level before his shoulder injury last year that held him out for the rest of the year. Again, we are seeing that the Bills are they are signing guys that are younger. Look at Josh Palmer. He's a guy who's 25. So I think the Bills are trying to sign younger guys that have a high ceiling and guys that can, play past what they have done on their former teams. And to pair him with Christian Bedford, who's only 24, let's say you assign Asante Samuel to a 3 or 4 year deal and you extend Christian Bedford for 3 to 4 years. They're what? Both roughly 26, 27, 28. So you can pair those two with Taryn, especially what Sean McDermott could do with DBs. There's your duo for quite some time.
And just to confirm, Josh Palmer is 25. He was born on September 22nd, 1999. So he will be 26 for this football season. But yeah, I mean, to that same point, that is the age range that the Bills go after, right? 25, 26 years old. They have untapped potential, and they want to get the best of them in Buffalo. Because how many times do you guys hear guys saying that I was able to be myself, right? Like Jordan Phillips says, I really blossomed in Buffalo because they let me be myself and I was able to reach my full potential. Where somewhere like Dallas or Miami, you kind of feel a little bit shelled up because maybe you have to be someone who you're not actually. And with Sean McDermott and his staff, apparently, I mean, these guys, they just say, go out and play football and don't overthink it. And I think that because of the community around here, right? Like it's not a big market. You don't have the media all over you every single time. I think that really helps these guys. So Josh Palmer fits that mold for the wide receivers. And sticking with his teammate, right? Or former teammate, Asante Samuel Jr. on the other side of the ball, maybe, okay. How
Some
about
recruiting,
this?
huh?
I don't know what happened in Chargers practice, but Asante Samuel had experience covering Josh Palmer at practice, right? So maybe you want to bring that tandem over and say, okay, iron sharpens iron. Come over to Buffalo here, because again, it's that same age group, 25, 26 years old, coming off of an injury. You think you can get them at a lower discounted rate, and you're going to look like the beneficiaries in the end, because I don't know. They said his market value is probably what, 11 or 12 million.
It was 11.6 per. I think it was Spot Track.
Yep. So I don't know how to feel about that, because the way the salary cap is gone, usually you have to add an extra 4 or 5 million. So does that mean he's actually going to get 15 or 16 million per year, or can you get him for around 10? Because if you can get Asante Samuel, let's just say 3 years, 30 million, I'd be all over that.
So would I. And, let me ask you a question. If he were to play his full year and he was playing at that level that he was last year, let's say that shoulder injury never happened, is he even in our range, or would he be outpriced?
I feel like he'd be outpriced, right? Because if he had a dominant year, he's probably going to say, give me at least 15, 17 million.
Right.
But now maybe you can get him in that 10 to 12 range and try to capitalize. And I hate to say it because it's not like you're trying to capitalize on an injury, but that's what they do. I mean, even going back to 2017 with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, those guys, to a lesser extent, right? They were solid pieces, but they didn't reach their full potential. They didn't peak until they got into Sean McDermott's defense. So maybe Samuel's looking for that next step that he can take. And the Bills' window is open with Josh Allen. But if you're trying to win in the next 2 to 3 years, then you can afford to say, hey, we're just going to give you a 2 or 3 year contract. If you outperform that and we don't have the money for you, then congrats on you. Then go earn your payday by, the Panthers or some other team that's just going to throw $25 million at you when the market goes up again. Yeah, so they might just say, just help us for 2 to 3 years and we'll help you. And if we can't come to an agreement at the end of that contract, then so be it. Congratulations. Thanks for everything you did.
Yeah, no, right. And one thing I do look at, we do have a question here from John Robert. What position does Samuel play? Asante Samuel is a boundary corner.
Yep. And what were we saying before that?
I lost my train of thought.
I was saying about the contract. You help me, we help you.
Let's just keep it moving, and if it comes back to me, come back to me. I'll say it.
Okay. If you want to pull up the free agent corners on Spot Track, we can look at that.
Yes.
And while we do that, going off of this comment here from Greg, Dalvin Tomlinson being released by the Browns or Jonathan Allen. Yes. So Jonathan Allen is probably the best defensive tackle out there. I'm not sure if he was on that list here.
The Giants re-signed Darius Slayton.
The Giants?
Yes, they re-signed Darius Slayton to a 3-year, $36 million deal.
Okay, Darius Slayton must know something because no one in their right mind would re-sign with the Giants after saying you want a fresh start and you want to reach your full potential. With that quarterback situation, like, are they getting Aaron Rodgers at this point?
They might, or is it Pittsburgh? And I do remember what I was going to say. I believe it was me, you, and Kevin Messeri when we were talking. Kevin Messeri did say, I believe it was Kevin, said that the Bills do like players coming off an injury and coming off their first contract as well.
Yeah, Kevin said that last
time. It kind of fits. Yes, and that does fit the mold for Asante Samuel.
Yeah, and that's why we thought that Paulson Adebo made sense too.
Right.
Long, physical corner, has those traits that we talk about. I believe he was 6'1", 6'2", 210 pounds. I think pretty much around Josh Palmer's size.
All right, and I got I got it pulled up here. It's not updated because it still says Ward is available, which he is not because he signed with the Colts. So yeah, basically everybody down from Charvarius Ward, who again signed with the Colts, is available.
Now, I will say, going back to Darius Slayton here, so 3 years, $36 million. That's the exact same contract that the Bills gave to Josh Palmer.
Right.
Knowing that now, are we happy with Josh Palmer, or would we have rather had Darius Slayton? I don't want to be a revisionist here, but it is worth having the discussion because I know a lot of people are talking about Slayton, and I think that he has more speed than Palmer does. But going back to how we open up this show, I think the Bills were looking for that separator. And that's pretty much what they target. I mean, they could have had Slayton, right? Because they made this move relatively early in terms of wide receivers. Because I feel like a lot of, defensive players, defensive linemen, and corners were flying off early. And we thought the Bills were going to jump in on the action. And you take a look at these veteran wide receivers from Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Chris Godwin. He did re-sign with Tampa Bay. But there are a lot of veteran receivers that they probably could have had their pick from. And they made it a point. Like they went after Josh Palmer. So that tells me Like, they clearly wanted him, and it wasn't just, well, we'll see how the chips fall, and maybe in a couple days we'll reach out to him. No, like they said, no, we want to sign you right now.
Yeah, they did. I know a lot of people say Brandon Beane's not active on the first day of free agency. Well, tampering, he was today with Josh Palmer. So obviously they clearly wanted him. I wonder if that was more of a Brandon Beane thing, or if I'm sure Joe Brady had his input on that too. Maybe that's a guy Joe Brady has been watching for scouting for quite some time.
Yes. Okay. So these are still the remaining free agents, right? Because Byron Murphy did sign with, who was it? He got a 4-year, $60 million contract.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. And I thought I saw Dane Jackson sign too.
I believe Dane Jackson did, Travarius Ward, and I believe Byron Murphy.
Because I remember I sent the Byron Murphy one in the chat. Oh, was it Indy? I think Murphy went to Indy.
Let me double check on that.
Yeah, I don't. Was it?
It was the safety that from Minnesota that got signed by the Colts. Byron Murphy's still available because Ari posted this 47 minutes ago with the top remaining free agents, and Byron Murphy's number 2 behind Javon Holland.
It's so hard to keep up with all this. Did you see the other quarterback trade? Kenny Pickett to the Browns for Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
And Josh Dobbs went to New England.
Yeah, I wonder what they're going to do with Joe Milton.
Yeah, I thought he played pretty well against us. Obviously, it was against our backups. We weren't playing for anything, but
yeah, he balled out and cost him the number 1 pick.
Yeah. So thank you for that, New England.
Oh, you're right. It was Cameron Bynum. That's who I was thinking of.
Bynum.
So, okay, Colts signed Cameron Bynum, the safety, 4-year, $60 million contract. So, yeah, Byron Murphy looks like he is still available according to this. Jonathan Jones, I think he could be a lower cost, lower tier free agent because of that Mike Pellegrino connection. So look for that one. Kendall Fuller, no thanks. Stephon Gilmore, no thanks. Been there, done that. Rasul Douglas, I think he's going to command too much. Mike Hilton, don't really need him because he's a slot. Dane Jackson, that's one I need confirmation on because I thought I heard that Dane signed and then Twitter went down.
I thought he did get signed. That's what I was hearing earlier. And Trey White. I do not want Tre'Davious White. No.
I love you, Trey, but again, been there, done that. If the injuries didn't happen, then he would probably be Christian Benford's running mate, and we wouldn't even have this conversation right now. But unfortunately,
we wouldn't be looking for a corner.
Unfortunately, those injuries just take a toll.
Right, it's kind of the same thing with the defensive line. You don't want to go back to bring in old friends. That's why I don't want to bring back a Jordan Poyer as well. I kind of want to move on from that and continue to, move forward and have a different result in the playoffs, especially against Kansas City.
Well, maybe Dane didn't sign.
Jordan.
Yeah, I thought I saw someone said that he was signing today, but I'm not seeing anything. So at the moment, Dane Jackson is still a free agent, but yeah, I mean, I don't really want to touch that again. Same with Ronald Darby. Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes is available. That could be interesting. He fits that age range, right? Because they did get Nate Hobbs. The Packers signed Nate Hobbs from the Raiders. So Stokes probably won't be back.
Right.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, guys like Adoree Jackson. I do like Eric Stokes. Living out in, Packer country. I get to see quite a few Packers games as well. And Eric Stokes, but isn't he a slot corner or is he a boundary?
I thought he was boundary, but I could be wrong. I don't have access.
If he's boundary, I would be interested in him. But if he's slot, obviously with Taryn, it's just there won't be a fit. Same thing with the corner Byron Murphy as well. I know he's a slot guy for Minnesota. Well, at least he was. Now, how would you feel about Adoree Jackson? Is a guy I know there was some interest in him last year and 2 years ago at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been that big of a fan for Adoree Jackson. I guess it'd be kind of unfair to say that without looking at his numbers, but I don't know. I just feel like the Bills need to do something at corner more than Adoree Jackson, and might need to be more than Eric Stokes too. That's why I feel like Asante Samuel would fit. I know I was pleading for Jonathan Jones, but when I say that, I don't think that that means Jonathan Jones is going to be the new CB2. I just think that he's going to be a depth signing because of Mike Pellegrino. So when I say that, he's probably going to be a corner 3, corner 4, potentially a corner 2 based on how the draft plays out, the rest of free agency, training camp. But if you're signing Jonathan Jones, I don't think it's to be Christian Benford's new partner.
No, I don't think so. I think that's why the Bills want to look at a guy like Asante Samuel if the price is right due to his age, coming off that first contract. I just think there's a lot of things that fit there that the Bills would be interested in. Now, question for you, because I don't know, is he? I
was going to say, looking at Eric Stokes, so he had 34 solo tackles. Looks like he had 42 combined. No sacks, no interceptions. Passer rating allowed was 96.7. He allowed 33 receptions. I don't know how many games he played. Those overall PFF grade for what this were. I know people don't totally like to read into these. 61.3, which ranked 112th out of 223. But I don't think he was a full-time starter. I can't remember what the Packers depth chart looked like.
Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes.
Yeah, that's another interesting one too. What's going to happen with Jair Alexander?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so now according to Pro Football Reference, so he played in all 17 games this year, but he only started 7 of them. So that's what it was. He was kind of like that spot starter. So I know he fits in terms of age, but we know how the Bills like the fit. And if you're trying to find a corner 2, 3, or 4, maybe that's why, at least in my mind, Jonathan Jones makes more sense.
I do think that Jonathan Jones would make more sense than a guy like Eric Stokes as well. Matt Collins is going to New England.
Is he really?
Yes, 2 years, $8.4 million deal that maxes out at 10.4. Wow.
Oh, man.
All right, Matt.
I didn't get that yet. No, that must be like literally breaking.
Mike Garafolo broke it. Yes. It's a reunion with Josh McDaniels.
Josh McDaniels. When were they together?
Wow.
Oh, Raiders?
Raiders, yes.
Huh.
Had to have been the Raiders. Well, alrighty.
Yeah, there it is. Patriots have agreed to terms with Matt Collins. 2 years, $8.4 million deal. It maxes out at 10.4. So what? The AEV is a little over 4? The Bills didn't want to pay that?
Yeah.
Or maybe, I mean, we don't know. We don't know what they offered or if Mac just wanted to go to New England. I don't know, but that seems like a very doable contract.
It does. Now, I do wonder what does that mean for a guy like Ty Johnson, who I really want to bring back.
Yeah, we haven't really heard anything on the Ty Johnson front.
Yeah.
Which
could be a good thing.
So I said we'll go till 7 o'clock at 7:07. So, I mean, there's really no time limit, but we will wrap this up sooner rather than later. So let's go back to the defensive backs. Let's take a look at the safety room, because what are our thoughts there? And I want to ask you about DeMar Hamlin, because I'm going to say if you can get DeMar back for $3 or $4 million, 5 at the very most, then okay. But if he's going to get more money, then congratulations, go get your money. So I'm going to set a hard cap at, let's just say, $4 million per year, right? Because I think a lot of fans are done with DeMar and saying we need to upgrade at safety. But if you have Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop, I'm trying to figure out what the Bills' plans are at safety, because Jeremy Chin, right? $8 million per year. I thought that would have been a nice signing, but with that overlap with Taylor Rapp. So that tells me if they didn't want to pay that for Jeremy Chin, someone who I've been pointing out was Marcus Epps, coming off an injury. Again, I guess we have a common theme here, but you can get him at a discounted rate. He was teammates with Josh at Wyoming. veteran safety. He'll probably know that he's not going to be a starter. Like he would literally be there to push Cole Bishop along. You could insert him as safety 3, if Cam Lewis is safety 4, maybe you draft someone. There you go. Now, I don't want to just fall in love with Marcus Epps just because he was the first player that I saw. But based on what's available in the market, Xavier Woods, is he going to command too much money? Julian Blackmon's available.
What I would do is, if the price is right with DeMar Hamlin, I do think that he will get more than $4 million, and I do think that it will be Pittsburgh. I know he's from there. I just don't know why. Now, me personally,
sorry, Pat, but breaking news: we do have a signing for the Bills. Michael.
Oh,
I'm probably gonna mispronounce his name.
I see that.
Yeah, Michael Hoecht.
Hoecht, yeah.
I believe
is he a pass rusher, right? Or is he a pass rusher or is he a coverage guy? I'm trying to remember when we played them. Huh.
I haven't gotten the notification yet, but I saw it in one of our chats here.
Yeah, I just saw it too. But yeah, as we're looking for it, I do think that DeMar Hamlin will get more than $4 million. And I think that the Bills are going to draft somebody, depending on how the rest of this goes until the draft. If we trade for a guy like Trey Hendrickson, I think we will draft a safety earlier than later and let him sit behind a guy like Taylor Rapp and take over that Taylor Rapp role once his contract expires.
Okay, so
have you found it yet? Because I haven't.
As we wait for this to come in here, now I'm looking at his Pro Football Reference. They have him listed as a defensive lineman in his first year, then a defensive tackle, then an outside linebacker. So I don't know his true position. He's listed as 6'4", 267 pounds. It looks like there's some position flexibility, though. We'll try to see. I mean, obviously, we're going to stay on with you guys more now. Looks like he's in that age range again, 25, 26 years old. And looking at his initial stats here, so 2021, he was a rookie with the Rams. So he did play with Taylor Rapp on that Super Bowl team, right? He started 3 games, played all 17. So there you go. I mean, he's played in every single game of his NFL career. He hasn't started every single one, but he also hasn't missed. Didn't do too much. He only had 7 tackles as a rookie. But then 2022, he started 6 games, had 36 combined tackles, 4.5 sacks. And then probably his best season was 2023. He started all 17 games, 81 combined tackles, and 6 sacks. And then this past season with the Rams, he started 5 out of those 17 games. He had 3 sacks and 56 tackles.
And it was a 3-year, $24 million deal. So average per year is like what, 8? It's a good amount of money.
I still haven't seen it yet.
See, I have it right here from Ian Rappaport. The Bills are adding again, this time signing free agent Rams linebacker Michael Hoecht on a 3-year deal worth a max value of $24 million. Okay. So it comes out to roughly $8 million a year. But yeah, that would be 8.
Okay, so I think he's one of those guys, he can play anywhere on the line. So positionless football, right? That's something that we've been talking about. And that age range, once again, 25, 26 years old, looking for that second contract, trying to find their peak. And I think he found a new home here in Buffalo, and the Bills are trying to make it that match that we've been talking about where he can play his best football over these next few years.
Now, seeing that this is a 3-year deal, and he is what I believe you said 27.
I need to look for confirmation on that.
He's 27.
Okay, so a little bit older than that age range, but still 25 to 27.
Does this interfere with the Trey Hendrickson trade?
I wouldn't think so, but
I wouldn't think so.
It's some decent money.
That is some decent money.
I got to get this pronunciation down here.
Yeah, I know. That's like what?
I don't want to mispronounce his name. He's one of those guys. Like I have seen him before. It's not like I've never seen the name. I just never learned how to say it because he wasn't one of our guys.
Right. I remember seeing his name a couple of times when we played them back in November, December.
Yeah, because the Bills played the Rams a couple times here. So
yeah. That versatility.
Okay,
Sean
so
McDermott loves it.
he's another Canadian. Look at that. He was born in Oakville, Ontario, lived in Canada until his family moved to Oakwood, Ohio when he was 3 years old. His family moved back to Canada for his first 2 years of high school, where he lived in Stittsville and went to South Carleton High School, and then Toronto, where he went to North Toronto Collegiate Institute before returning back to Ohio. So I guess he kind of bounced around a little bit. And then he played for the Brown Bears for 4 seasons in college. He was named second team All Ivy League as a senior after finishing the season with 42 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks. Finished his collegiate career with 174 tackles, 29.5 tackles for loss, and 16.5 sacks with 2 forced fumbles and 4 fumble recoveries in 37 games played. And he was undrafted in 2020. He was drafted in the CFL draft, round 2, pick 10 in 2020. And then he went undrafted, it looks like, and the Rams picked him up.
Man, that's the guy we didn't even talk about when we brought the defensive line.
See, I knew there was going to be one of those sneaky additions that no one was really talking about here, and there it is.
Yeah, it's the guy we didn't even mention. That's, again, why we are not Brandon Beane.
Okay, so let's see here. He was signed by the Rams as an undrafted free agent following the 2020 draft. In his second year, he signed a reserve/futures contract with the team on January 18, 2021, and then he made the Rams' 53-man roster for the entire 22 season. He was on the Rams' active roster, and midway through the season, the Rams moved his position from defensive tackle to outside linebacker. As a starter in the final 7 games, Hoecht produced 34 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 8 quarterback hits. Okay. So there you go. There's a quick synopsis on the Buffalo Bills' new defensive lineman, Michael Hoecht.
Hoecht.
Still need to find that pronunciation here. If anyone has it, please spell it out in the chat here. Or Michael
And
Hoecht,
he's 6'4".
someone says.
He's 6'4", so he does have that size. And 2 more signings, not related to the Buffalo Bills. The Bengals, former Bengals linebacker Akeem Davis-Gaither signed with the Cardinals. And former Broncos running back Javonte Williams is signing with the Dallas Cowboys.
Are you kidding me? That's like another Zeke Elliott, right? Just like a older, broken down running. Well, Javonte Williams isn't that old, but he definitely lost a step after that injury.
Right.
I don't know about that, but okay, that's not our problem to worry about.
No. $3 million.
Okay, now this one says it's pronounced Hoecht. Michael Hoecht.
Hoecht. That does sound right.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so it was from the Rams media guide here.
Hoecht.
Michael Hoecht. Okay, so how do we feel about Michael Hoecht? Now I feel more comfortable that I'm not pronouncing his name wrong.
Yeah, I like the versatility that he brings and his size. I can't wait until, once we get out of here, I'm going to go watch some film on him because I'm not really familiar with him. I do recall seeing his name a couple of times, but I can't wait to go back and actually watch some film on him. But overall, though, just a quick overview. I do like the versatility again and the size. Really stands out to me.
Yes, I will have to see because there's been a problem with our account here. But I got to get back on PFF and see because we got to get into those advanced stats because we need to see like where all these defensive linemen are coming here because this is definitely an intriguing piece because to your question, does that mean that they're out on the Trey Hendrickson sweepstakes? Is this a replacement? Because I don't think it is. Like you can't tell me that this is it when you have the defensive end and defensive tackle to address.
Yeah, no, I think this is more of a guy that replaces Von Miller because it is that $8 million range. So I think this is a guy that replaces Von Miller in a way. Maybe? Because if Von Miller would have taken a pay cut, wouldn't he have been around $8 million?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's unfair to say that he's Von Miller's replacement just because of Von's stature as that dominant pass rusher. So yeah, I don't know. And I think the reason he's 27 is because he had that extra year because he got drafted with the CFL. Then he signed as that undrafted free agent. So, I mean, he definitely fits the Bills' DNA, though, right?
Yes,
Just
he does.
underrated, and come here and prove yourself. Like, I think that's what it boils down to. Like, clearly they like the football side of things, but aside from football, he's been an underdog, and he might have some of these bigger physical traits. He has that flexibility. He's in that age range, and the Bills are going to say, all right, man, we're going to give you this contract. Come prove yourself.
Yeah, I definitely think that's what it is. You know, the Bills do love the players that have chips on their shoulder. And I think that fits this signing as well.
Okay. So, if anyone has more opinions on Michael Hoecht, feel free. We'll probably stay on. At this point, it's 7:20. So we'll just say we're going to log off for the night at 7:30. Do we want to go back to the defensive backs here? Because I'm still not satisfied there.
Yes. Yeah, let's do it.
And then in the meantime, we can get some more information. So yeah, if you scroll down here, Damontae Kazee, not really. Quandre Diggs, a little bit too old, but maybe just as that vet safety 3, safety 4. Chuck Clark, I mean, does he do anything for it? I know he had a season-ending injury, played a full season with the Jets. He's about to turn 30, so he's not that old yet. Marcus May, Rodney McLeod, Andre Sisco. A lot of people have been talking about Andre Sisco. Now, I think that he could be a very, very good signing, but does he fit from a financial perspective? Because I think he's got a market value of $10.8 million. And if you were not willing to give $8 million to Jeremy Chin, are you going to want to give upwards of 10 to 12 to Andre Sisco, if not more?
Probably not. I like the player, but the price, I still think that the Bills will go draft a safety and let him develop under Taylor Rapp and then take over for Taylor Rapp once his contract expires.
See, I just don't think that they're going to be content with Cam Lewis and a rookie. Because Cole Bishop, we don't even know if he's going to be a starter. So we're going to at least get one vet safety and one rookie, in my opinion. So that's why I don't think it's going to be Sisco, because that means that they might be out on Cole Bishop for now. Like, that's going to block his growth.
Right.
And I don't think that they want to take away from Taylor Rapp, because Taylor Rapp has played pretty well.
Yes.
So that's why when I was suggesting Marcus Epps, he could fit, I guess, Rodney McLeod, but he's a little bit too old. I mean, I don't really want a 35-year-old, because at that point, bring back Jordan Poyer, and, you know, that ship sailed as well.
Yeah.
Now, Javon Holland, he is probably the best safety available, but again, to the points that we just made, way too much money, and he's going to block Cole Bishop's growth.
Right. We don't want that. I know, and Sean McDermott's pretty high on Cole Bishop as well. The way he was speaking about him at the Combine, he spoke pretty highly of him, saying they want him to win that job, but he has to earn it. So to your point, maybe the Bills do bring in a safety. Maybe it is Marcus Epps.
And then, can we just go back to that corner room real quick?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're not leaving anyone off here. And then I'll try to see if we have some other news in the meantime.
All right, there we go. It is up.
Yeah, so we did say that Travarius Ward went to the Colts, right?
Yes. Yes, he did.
Okay. Yep, so 3 years worth up to $60 million. Byron Murphy, Jeff Okudah. I saw some people talking about him, maybe a reclamation project. And then we talked about these guys. Oh, I think we left off with Trey White. You want to just scroll down there?
Yes.
What else we have?
Let's do that.
Oh, yeah, and we talked about Eric Stokes.
Yep, Eric Stokes.
Avonte Maddox is interesting. I believe he has some flexibility, a little bit inside-outside, but he is kind of small. And if you're trying to get a CB2, I don't know if he fits that mold. So if we were to scroll down here, obviously we've been talking about Asante Samuel. Rock Ya-Sin, maybe. Benjamin St. Juste. Yeah, I mean, maybe Michael Jackson. See, it reaches that point where there's that drop-off. And you get the classic, like, Eli Apple. He's always a free agent at this time. Fabian Moreau, Artie Burns, just like classic guys. They're going to sign those 1-year deals, just try to latch on with someone. So I don't know. What do the Bills do at corner now?
I still think it's Asante Samuel Jr. or Jonathan Jones.
Yeah. So to John's question here, those are our two favorites right there. If they want to go for the younger, more expensive guy, it's going to be Asante Samuel Jr. If they want to go with the cheaper veteran who knows the system, it's going to be Jonathan Jones, in our opinions. Now, there could be someone like this Michael Hoecht, who no one really had him on the radar, and the Bills are going to surprise us with him. So that's what makes this time of the year so interesting. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep.
Okay, so as we wrap this up here, trying to see if there's any more news, but I guess we'll just kind of recap with what we know based on Josh Palmer and Michael Hoecht. So, just to finish this out here, the Bills did sign 2 Canadians. One was a wide receiver, Josh Palmer, to a 3-year, $36 million contract. And now we had that report from Mike Garafolo that they are signing Michael Hoecht, a defensive lineman, to a 3-year, $24 million contract. So I think these are nice pieces. I wouldn't say that these are needle movers. Would you, Pat?
No, I would not say that they're needle movers. I think these are just depth pieces that are going to perform pretty well for us. But yeah, no, I'm still waiting for that needle mover signing or trade to come.
And just to recap with Josh Palmer, so he's not the classic burner. If you're looking for someone to stretch the field vertically, maybe he can, but he's going to do that because of his route running and his footwork and that separation. He's not just going to beat you one-on-one because of his speed like Xavier Worthy. But the Bills needed that press man coverage beater, and they got that with Josh Palmer. Some might say it's an overpay, and maybe you're still under the impression that they should have traded for DK Metcalf and given that extension. And so what? That's fine. You are entitled to that opinion, because I was thinking that maybe they just go the Tyler Lockett route and just get a field stretcher in that capacity. But I think that they definitely improved in that category because the Bills were lacking separation. So they did get that with Josh Palmer. And then just to reiterate what we just said with Michael Hoecht here, position flexibility. He's played all over the defensive line, as he's listed as a pass rusher, outside linebacker, and defensive tackle. The Rams converted him throughout those years there. He was an undrafted free agent, and he hasn't missed a game in his 4-year career. So he's played all 68 games. He has started 31 of those. And in his career, he has 180 tackles, 13 and a half sacks, 15 tackles for a loss, 4 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and 26 quarterback hits. Ooh. So I think that is just a chess piece for Sean McDermott in this defense. And we'll just have to wait and see. We'll get more film and more tape that comes out on him, some more advanced analytics, and we will try to get those to you guys as soon as we can here, because it is going to be rolling here over the next few days, Pat, because you know how that once it starts, then it keeps rolling. So by no means are the Bills done. I feel like they're just getting started, but I think it's important to note that you can't go get a Khalil Mack anymore. You can't just go out and sign whoever you want, because there have been a ton of transactions today, but we know how Brandon Beane works, and he will continue to make moves probably like these under the radar guys who fit that mold that we've been talking about for weeks.
Agreed. Yeah. Brandon Beane's not just going to go out and sign anybody because everybody else is signing players. Brandon Beane's going to wait for his guy, and he's going to wait for it to be the right price.
So do we have any final predictions for tonight, tomorrow, Wednesday? We want to hear from you in the chat too. We do have a few minutes left here. So any final predictions, maybe trade scenarios? Do you want to pull that up with Trey Hendrickson one more time? If we have some new people here. So 1,400 people, thank you for tuning into our live episode here, whether it was your dinner time or maybe you're out on the West Coast and it was still afternoon for you. We are happy to bring you some coverage here, trying to piece it all together as it is coming very fast. So apologize if we missed anything. Again, glad we found out the pronunciation for Michael Hoecht, the newest Buffalo Bill.
Yes, Michael Hoecht. Yeah, I guess my prediction would be stay tuned for Bean After Dark.
Yes, stay tuned for that. So yeah, we pulled up this this trade calculator from Over the Cap, and we tried to see what it would look like for Trey Hendrickson. So why don't we just throw up that projection again, Pat? So we'll give Cincinnati the first overall pick here, or first round pick, I should say. Thank God it's not the first overall pick because
Right.
And then where did we land? Probably next year's first, right? And then a second.
Next year's first and a second, yes.
Okay. And then was it the Bengals win whether we give them 56 or 62?
Yes, they won either way.
Okay. So maybe if you take away pick 30 and just give them keep 56 in next year's first, see what happens.
Then the Bills would be winning.
Yeah, but since he wouldn't want to make that trade, according to this.
Yeah, right.
Because I do want to kind of come up with one final projection here for the night, and we'll sign off. Trying to read any comments here. Bills wouldn't pay Hollins $4 million a year. What the heck are they doing? Yeah, I'm not sure about that one because he was a fan favorite.
Yeah, he was. Came up with some big plays too in the playoffs against Denver and against Kansas City.
Yeah, he was a glue guy, to Doug's point here. Hope it's not going to bite them because it seemed like he kind of was that calming presence where you're thinking like, oh man, the nerves are at an all-time high. We're going to the AFC Championship game.
Yep.
And here comes Mac Hollins wearing a costume and he's barefoot. And it's like, oh, well, I guess he's not worried today.
Yeah, no, and he brought that attitude too. Look what he did, that AI step over Pat Surtain against Denver in the playoffs.
Yeah. And then in terms of what we have left in the cap, that's a good question because we don't know, especially with these new deals coming in between Josh Palmer and Michael Hoecht. We thought that going into today, they probably had somewhere in the $10 to $20 million range. So that obviously came down with these deals, but we'll see how much. But it's important to note that the Bills could probably create another $30 million if they wanted to restructure Deion Dawkins, saving potentially $10 million. They could restructure Ed Oliver, saving 8.7. They could restructure Curtis Samuel. If they can trade Kaiir Elam, that would save 2.6 because if they were to just cut him, you don't save anything because of his guarantees. So there's too much there with Kaiir in terms of guarantees. So they wouldn't have any cap savings if they were just cut him. So if you can trade him, cool. Mitch Trubisky is another one. Maybe if they want to go with Mike White as QB2, you cut Mitch, you save $2.5 million right there. We talked about Sam Martin last week. That one came true. So there are some moves here that the Bills can still make. So don't get too worried. Don't get too caught up in the whole salary cap thing, because if they want to make a move, they can do it. So going back to Trey Hendrickson here, if they want to make this trade tonight, then you can just go to Deion Dawkins and say, hey, we're restructuring your deal. We're going to kick the can down the road a little bit here because you're our franchise left tackle anyways. And we're going to open up $10 million so that we can trade for and then extend Trey Hendrickson.
It definitely can happen. And maybe it does.
Okay, so what do we have here? We had the 2 first-round picks in the second, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm thinking, would you want to give up this year's first or next year's?
I would prefer to give up next year's.
But I'm wondering, since he would probably say like they want, because they have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're probably trying to win now. So let's just say that it's probably the 2025 first round pick. And then take away next year's first, because I want to see what that would entail. Like a first, second, and a fifth, according to this. Still wouldn't be enough then. Okay, now add next year's first. See what happens. Yeah, so the Bengals win it by a lot.
Yes. But what if we take out that fifth and they give us a third that has us winning? A fourth? Maybe they throw us back a fifth.
Now, to the people that are saying don't give up a first round pick, and maybe since he just wants, so you probably are going to have to give a first according to this, but I'm wondering if you could do like a second, a fifth, and a sixth. See how far off it would be.
A second, fifth, and a sixth. All right. All right, second, fifth. Okay.
Yep. Okay, yeah, so still not enough.
Yeah. The Broncos are going to sign Dre Greenlaw.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Also, I'm seeing here someone is saying that in a 3-4, Michael Hoecht is going to be an outside linebacker. 4-3, he would be a defensive end. But again, he has experience as a defensive tackle too. So it looks like he can play across the line. And maybe, as much as we were saying Von Miller, maybe that's more of a Dwan Smoot replacement.
It very well could be, because he played both for us last year.
But that just means that you're going to have to replace Von Miller and then still try to find that dominant pass rusher.
The impact
if they get Trey Hendrickson, then this is fine. But if it's just Michael Hoecht, then what exactly is the plan?
I guess draft a guy and hope he plays extremely well in his rookie year. I still think there's another move to be made in the defensive end room.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too. But I'm wondering if they saw how the defensive tackles were kind of flying off the shelf as well, or just defensive linemen in general. And they said, okay, well, maybe let's just go get a guy who can play both positions and we can kill two birds with one stone.
That very well could be the case.
So, all right. Well, I think that'll do it here. I don't know exactly. It looks like for this, the Bills are probably going to have to give up a first for Trey Hendrickson. We'll see what the Bengals would say in real life. But just for those wondering, you're probably going to have to give up a first and a second, if not more. Could be wrong. Maybe it is less, but I think that the Bengals, they probably know that they're between a rock and a hard place, right? Like they don't want to trade him, but they want to get as much back in return. So I don't think that they're just going to ship him for a second or a third. Like they're probably going to try to want to get as much as they can.
Right. They are going to try to get as much as they can for him. Because, he did lead the NFL in sacks last year, and they are going to have to replace that production.
All right. Well, if there is some more breaking news, tomorrow is my other off day. So maybe we could fire this up again. If not, maybe we could just do a quick recap video. There's another signing here. Let's see what Walter said real quick. No way you're giving up 2 picks and you still have to sign them. The Bengals know that. Yeah, so the Bengals do have some leverage here. So that's why it's tough. And to our point here, maybe Michael Hoecht diminishes that. I still think they could get Hendrickson, but very curious to see what happens throughout the night and throughout the coming days here.
Yeah, I can't wait either. It's going to be fun. It's going to be another night of waking up in the middle of the night and checking our phones. Which I did.
Or you can just not go to sleep and just a night owl and stay up throughout the night.
Yeah, just stay up all night.
So, all right, Pat, any final thoughts here before we sign off?
Yeah, just wait for Brandon Bean after dark, because that is a real thing. And thank you for everybody for tuning in with us. We're pushing an hour and 50 minutes. We really appreciate it, and go Bills.
Yep. So thank you to the almost 1,400 live viewers here right now. You can go back and watch on the Built in Buffalo YouTube channel. Make sure to drop a comment, subscription, like it, and we'll be back as soon as we can, as soon as we get some more news for you guys, whether it's live, maybe something pre-recorded, but just make sure if you subscribe, that way you will know when we have more content for you. So with that, we will wait for Bean After Dark. Go Bills.